Evident that she was not aware personally that anybody was supposed to be in possession of this document.
The MOD eventually confirmed that they had received a report from Colonel Halt, but had come to no conclusions about what it described. And that was all they would say.
They shoo us out after a few minutes and just said, well, you've been warned, you know, do not, you know, sort of tread where you shouldn't be treading. And we went out and we sat on the steps for ages and we were just mulling over, really, what they'd said to us.
But this was far from the end of the story for the intrepid investigators.
Having possession of this document now was a vindication that we had never expected, but which, of course, we were determined to make the most of.
In the summer of 1983, an opportunity to show off their find presented itself in the form of a UFO conference.
It was not announced as part of the main programme, it was just an opportunity to show to the UFO community the fact that what we've been harping on about for the last 3 years had now actual physical substance, and we could verify that there was a truth here.
Everybody's face, that was the picture, you know, to actually present it on the table, and Dot said, here's the proof, you know, what we've been talking about, you know, it's the truth.
My God, you know, what's this? The deputy commander of a frontline NATO base reporting UFOs off base? He is actually writing about unexplained aerial phenomena that neither he nor the personnel that he had around him could explain.
For a community reliant on rumour, myth and conjecture, this official document gave the case an unprecedented kudos.
Within a matter of days, many of the UFO community had forgotten all about the things they'd said before against the case, and were now speaking out in favour of it and proclaiming it as the greatest case that had ever happened, that this was Britain's Roswell.
Britain's Roswell was about to hit the newsstands. Jenny decided to pay a visit to the regional editor of the News of the World. She took with her a colleague from a local UFO association.
Jenny opened her handbag and took out the Holt memo and passed it to George Mackintosh. And when he read it, his eyes were on stalks. He knew he had something then. This was something tangible.
George Mackintosh immediately dispatched one of his top reporters to Suffolk to confront Colonel Halt.
When I arrived at the base, quite surprisingly, I simply drove on, and they very obligingly directed me to the office where Colonel Halt was. I could see he was probably a little more curious than anything else to have a News of the World reporter sitting in his office. But when I produced the report and asked him really what it was all about, the colour began to drain from his face slightly. And when I explained that we would in all probability be publishing a story concerning his report, he sat down and asked me to sit down, and he said, "You do realise that if this is made public, I will quite probably be flying a desk for the rest of my career."
The News of the World published anyway. The story was a sensation.
When the story appeared in the News of the World, there was instant furore all over the world. It made headlines in virtually every country. Nearly every major newspaper and TV station in Britain was talking about it. I had to take my phone off the hook because it was constantly being bombarded by journalists.
It gave a lot of people something to talk about, something to write about, something to start investigating. It put Rendlesham on the map.
Well, let's first look at the evidence. The prime evidence is a letter from Lieutenant Colonel Holt to our Ministry of Defence, dated, I believe, the 13th of January 1980. And this is...
I was invited to appear on Breakfast TV on the following Monday morning, and Brenda and Dot were on the ITV version.
This morning we have with us in the studio the two ladies who have been living with the story for 3 years. They are UFO investigators Mrs. Dot Street and Mrs. Brenda Butler. Good morning.
We were doing television nearly every day, going from one television station to another. Radio, we were doing nearly every radio that was on the air.
It changed the face of the case because now, instead of it being a UFO investigation, which we were only just beginning, it became public property. Really, it turned the whole event from a careful investigation into a media circus.
The story began to take on a life of its own.
You start off with something which might be very, very simple, and before you know where you are, you've not just got a triangular craft and flashing lights. You've got little gentlemen in silver suits hovering above the ground and walking around, and then returning to this craft and going away. And the whole picture starts to get more and more exciting. People have more to say.
But as the world went UFO mad, there was a quiet voice in a Suffolk wood who was about to deliver the story, its first critical blow.
The countryside and woodlands in particular, I've always been in them. That's my whole life, really.
Vince Thurkettle was a forester who lived in the middle of Rendlesham Forest at the time of the incident. On hearing the rumours, he went to see the site for himself.
That was one of the biggest disappointments of my life. 20-odd years of playing in woods taught me what to see, and this site was ordinary. It was just ordinary and natural. Nothing strange or unusual had happened there.
In a clearing, Vince examined the so-called landing marks.
Sure enough, the landing site had some sticks marking 3 of these, which were roughly in a triangle, but as a forester, to me they were nothing more than rabbit scrapes. They certainly weren't the feet marks of some craft having landed.
Having dismissed the case 2 years before, Vince was shocked when the forest became the centre of media attention, with him in the spotlight.
Every single shred of physical evidence I'd seen could be explained away naturally. Suddenly, here was all the press talking to me, who was the lone voice at that time, saying, "I don't think this happened."
But Vince didn't remain the lone voice for long.
I was trying to find the truth. I was trying to find if there was another side to the story which the ufologists weren't telling you. And I think I did. I believe that cases like this should stand or fall on the evidence that's available, and I'm afraid I know from past experience that UFO cases are never quite the way they appear to be when they're presented in the newspapers.
It was great to have someone on my side instead of everyone just calling me an idiot, and great to spend time with someone who had dealt with all this before. He had dealt with other alleged sightings.
Vince searched the forest for rational explanations.
Just off to the side is where the alleged landing happened. So the American patrol would have come through here somewhere and out to the edge of the forest, which is out on our right, from where you look out over the fields, over the few houses and out towards the lighthouse.
The Orford Ness Lighthouse, 6 miles to the east, offered a tantalisingly simple solution to the puzzle. Could this be what Holt and his colleagues had seen winking at them in the night?
I'd been jogging down this track at night, and the first time I saw the lighthouse I really thought it was poachers with a lamp in the forest. So I knew that to people who weren't ready for it, the lighthouse really appeared to be a pulsing light within the forest. I knew that from earlier, and I think the fact that the lighthouse can only be seen from very certain parts of the forest, and one of them is exactly where all the alleged landing happened.
The generally accepted position of the landing site was here, at the edge of the forest. Colonel Holt told us he was looking across the field and there was a farmhouse in front of him here, and the flashing light was almost in line with that farmhouse. And if you draw a line from where they were, through that farmhouse, you come to the Orford Ness Lighthouse.
But now we've got some breakfast time evidence that the story may not be all it seems. In the early hours of this morning, our science expert, Ian Ridpath, visited the site to investigate.
Vince and Ian went public with their theory.
It's an eerie feeling standing here at 2 o'clock in the morning on the spot where a UFO in the form of a bright flashing light reportedly landed